Good morning, friends. Okay, so we are starting our systems now. We've done the intro to human anatomy, and so now we're going to start in. And our first system is the integumentary system. It sounds super intimidating, but it's just your skin. So this is the outer covering of your body. It protects, keeps everything together. It is your largest organ. Your skin is your largest organ. Some functions are protection. It protects from water loss and air loss, stops bacteria, virus, chemicals, things that shouldn't be in your body normally, stops them from entering the body. And so that is the main function, is there to protect you. And we don't want to see everything gross. You want your skin there. And then it also is for sensation. So it contains nerve receptors it's your sense of touch. It's also your sense of pressure, temperature, and pain. And there's an extremely uneven distribution of these nerve receptors. Some areas of your skin are much, much more sensitive to these sensations than others. So just kind of be aware of that. Also, your skin is responsible for temperature regulation. And so you have blood vessels that are close to the surface of your skin that can be more dilated, so bigger, and they have more blood flowing through them. That the blood is carrying the heat, and so that heat can be released from your skin. That's why you flush when you're hot. They also can contract, so there's a limited amount of blood flowing so close to the surface that keeps more of the heat internal, keeps you warmer. You do lose some waste through your body. That's your sweat. The salts that, your sweat is kind of salty, the salts that are there and some of the other chemicals. Your skin is also responsible for some vitamin D manufacturing. If you've been out in the sun, then your body can make some vitamin D. Not enough necessarily, but it does help with that a little bit. And then absorption. You can absorb some chemicals and some drugs through your skin. You've seen people like with patches on, like nicotine patches, like if they're trying to stop smoking. So you can absorb some things there. Some oxygen will go through also to the surface, like your eyes and some other areas. It's not your main way to get oxygen, though. Okay, so now the layers of the skin. So we're going to start with I don't know why I did it this way, but I did, so we'll just live with it. The epidermis, which is the outer layer, so the most superficial, and then it's made up of multiple layers. We'll start at the lowest layer there. So we're starting on the outside, but then we'll start and move our way back up. So first off, you have the stratum basal. And this is the deepest epidermal layer. It is attached to the dermis, which will be our next major layer down. Single cells, this is where your skin, like what you see, is really produced. This is the source of new cells. Very quick cell division here. You lose skin cells all the time, so they're constantly being replaced. Then you have the stratum spinosum. This one is several cell layers thick, and there'll be a little diagram in a couple of slides. It contains this is pre-carination. This is where you have proteins that are added into the cells to give them some tension, some resistance, some strength. All right, then the stratum granulosum. This is 3 to 5 flat cell layers. This more keratin is added in here. This is where cells kind of toughen up. This is where they really thicken and get stronger. This is the last cell layer to receive nutrition or nourishment. Then the stratum lucidum. You have 3 to 5 flat dead cell layers. The cells are still, they're newly dead, which doesn't sound really great, but so they're still slightly moist. They're still a little bit kind of sticky here. And then the last one, this is the actual outermost layer. This is the stratum corneum. This is the biggest layer, 20 to 30 cell layers. contains lots of keratin, have very thick plasma membranes, very thick outer layers. This is your protection. This layer is waterproof, and this is the layer that is continuously being shed. When you're looking at a person, you're looking at their stratum corneum, and so you're pretty much looking at dead cells when you see a person. Yay, happy thought. Okay, so here's that picture I mentioned. So notice it has, the drawing obviously is nice and you really can see the layers. The actual slide is, it's not quite so layered out, which is, real life. And so you have the different areas. Notice that even though the cells are, up here at the very top, very kind of layered and kind of all over the place, they still have that good thick cell membrane around them, so they are still considered cells. But as you go kind of farther down, you can still see in some cells like the nucleus that's in there. It's because they're still living, and how kind of dramatically the shape changes as they move on upward. Okay, so now the next big layer is the dermis. This is the deepest skin layer. You just have two, the epidermis and the dermis. This is very strong, flexible layer. This is what really truly is holding the body together. This is the strength. This is kind of gross to think about it this way, but this is the hide. So, like if you hear about people, like when they, take the skin off of an animal and they work it and get to the hide, like get to the leather. This is the leather. So you have lots of nerve fibers here, blood vessels, lymph nodes. So everything to kind of control and to provide nourishment and immune system stuff. It's also where your sweat glands are, oil glands, hair follicles. And so this is where like real things are happening. In the epidermis, there's not a lot of other than producing the cells. It's not a lot of other things happening, but here in the dermis, there's more going on. Just some kind of points of interest. If you have stretch marks, of course, you know about this from like women who have been pregnant, but you can get stretch marks from growing too quickly, from like working out and your muscles build up, or you just are growing height-wise. This stretch marks are tears in the dermis, and they're basically scars from where those tears have been repaired. And then you also have flexure lines. These are basically wrinkles, not any nicer to say it that way, but they are permanent lines in the skin, like where you have joints that meet, folds. And this is, these fibers lose their elasticity over time, and so they just don't spring back. Okay, so now kind of some points in there. You have the papillary layer, and this connects the dermis to the epidermis. And then the reticular layer, this is the major part of the dermis. These are the cells that form the fibers, the strength, the elasticity, just the bulk of it. And then the subcutaneous layer. This attaches, so this is underneath the dermis. It attaches the dermis to the muscle. This is where you have your fat, and so you may associate that with fat. And that fat has a purpose, and it is for insulation. It's also for cushion. You might have, like, sometimes you have to get a shot. Very often they'll say this needs to go into the subcutaneous layer. Your subcutaneous layer is also where you get wrinkles. So, goods and bads. Okay, so now skin color. Skin color is the product of different pigments, 3 main pigments. You have melanin, which your body produces naturally. This is what determines like if you can tan or not. And so different people have different amounts of melanin, and it is produced by increased sun exposure. So you lay out in the sun, you get a tan. Carotene is an orange-yellow pigment, and it is found more in more abundance in certain plants: carrots, squash, sweet potatoes, and these all accumulate in your stratum corneum. You'll see kids sometimes, especially like little babies, who have kind of orange tinge, like the tips of their nose or their fingers. They have eaten lots of carrots. My sweet boy Sam was an orange baby. He had lots of keratin when he was little. We fed him carrots. And then the last one, hemoglobin. The red color of oxygenated hemoglobin is what gives kind of a pink tinge to Caucasian skin. And so if you have a darker skin tone, more melanin, that's kind of overshadowed. But if you have lighter skin, then you often see kind of the pink tinge. Okay, so skin appendages, and we'll talk more about this obviously in class because you guys will have questions, and I know one of our questions was about hair. So hair is probably the number one that we are all concerned with, and hair is flexible strands of hard keratinized cells. Your hair is dead. So it's very tough, very durable because of the keratin that's in it. Doesn't flake. So, like if you have ever dealt with dandruff, or someone who has, it's not the hair itself. That dandruff comes from your scalp. That's still skin. And so your hair is made up of two main parts: the shaft, which is what actually sticks out of the skin, projects from the skin. Couple of things about it: the shape of the shaft determines your texture. If you have flat shafts, you have curly hair. If they are oval, your hair is more wavy, and if they are perfectly round, then you have perfectly straight hair. You have layers to the shaft. So you have the cuticle, which is the outer layer. It's a single layer of kind of overlapping cells. So if you look at a piece of hair, you kind of can see these overlapping layers. The middle layer is called the cortex, and this is where the pigment is. And by the way, that cuticle, the outer layer, is translucent, so the color, you can see the color through it. And then the medulla is the innermost layer. These are the largest cells. They give really the flexibility to the hair itself. And then you have the root of the hair, and this is what is embedded down into the skin. Now, the hair follicles, this is what is down in the dermis, or sometimes down in the subcutaneous layer. This is where the hair cells are produced. This is where they are filled with the keratin and the pigment. And all hair follicles are attached to a muscle, the erector muscle. And this is a muscle that has the ability to contract. And when it contracts, it pulls the hair follicle upward. So it pulls. So here, if my hand is the hair, it will pull the hair upward, and that muscle is what is causing that. And so it is what causes the bump, like goosebumps. It causes the skin to kind of dimple a little bit. Hair follicles go through periods of inactivity, and so sometimes or not sometimes, but all the time, you have hair that is falling out. And so it kind of goes in a cycle, 30% of your hair follicles are inactive at one time, kind of through a rotation. So you're constantly losing hair, but you also have that hair being replaced. Chemicals, high fevers, diet, stress can cause an increase in the inactivity of your hair follicles. So this sometimes, if you've been really sick or stressed, or if you're on a crazy diet, you can lose more hair. So something just to kind of be aware of. And then baldness. This is an inherited trait, and there are different types of baldness, different patterns of baldness, and so it's inherited, and you have certain genes that can shut down the follicle activity. Nails, your fingernails, your toenails, these are modified epidermal cells. So they're skin cells basically, but just with a very high amount of keratin. And so again, they're produced a little bit differently, but still the same basic structure, just lots of keratin. Okay, sweat glands, yay. So these are how you get your sweat out. And 99% of your sweat is water. So it's one of the things, they talk about like dehydration. If you sweat a lot, you are losing water for the most part. The other 1% is salts. It can be amino acids. It can be urea, which is a component of urine. Sweat glands themselves, and you'll see this when we and I show you a picture at the end of this, but also when we do our coloring, they are coiled up tubes that extract excess water. They extract salt from the surrounding capillaries. Those capillaries are tiny blood vessels. Sweat glands are down in the subcutaneous layer, and you have two different types of sweat glands. The eccrine sweat glands, these are on your palms, the soles of your feet, your forehead. These are active from birth, like babies sweat, but it's mainly hands and feet and forehead sometimes. But if you've ever held hands, with a little kid, their hands are kind of gooey, and so that's because they're sweating. Now the other ones, the apocrine sweat glands, these don't become active until puberty or close to it. These are found in your armpits. This is when, somebody says to you, hey, please wear deodorant. That's because now you're sweating in your armpits. Your genital region, you also have apocrine sweat glands. These are when you start to notice body odor. And the reason for this is because there's also fatty acids that are being excreted with the normal sweat. And so you have this combination of sweat, the fatty acids, the substances on the skin, and waste products, and bacteria that live on your skin love to feed on these dead skin cells, and they produce waste. And so that's really what you're smelling. Pleasant thought for the day. Now, normal person has about 2.5 million sweat glands, lots of them. And again, remember, sweat is used to control temperature for the most part, but then there's also some just getting rid of waste. So now, those of us who just like to sit around on the couch, because that's awesome, lose about half a pint of sweat a day. So not a ton, but if it's a pretty decent amount of sweat, if you pour it into, gross, but if you poured it into a cup. Active humans can lose, depending on what you're doing, can lose over 2 gallons of sweat a day and survive. Obviously, though, you do definitely need to stay hydrated, even if you're just sitting around, because you are always losing water. Okay, oil glands. So these are a big deal to most teenagers, just because of the possibility of acne and different skin issues, which we'll get to in a minute. Now, oil glands are sometimes called sebaceous glands, and they produce sebum or oil, and it does have a purpose. It is to help keep your hair hydrated and kind of provide some prevention of water loss, keeps your hair and your skin kind of soft. And oil glands are all over your body, again, except your palms and the soles of your feet. Again, that's because you need those to hold on to stuff, so you don't want them to be oily. The highest concentration of oil glands are found on your scalp, especially the forehead, some on the chest, some on the upper back. And so again, this kind of correlates to where you see more outbreaks of kind of some skin issues. Oil glands are usually associated with hair follicles, and so lots of times the oil will move up with the hair follicle as it is growing or as it's coming out. Sometimes the oil is in the pores, but they're kind of more often with hair follicles. Oil production is generic. So some people have more oily skin than others. Some people have drier skin, some people have combination skin. But so that's all genetic. And in general, the production of oil is regulated by hormones that could become active during puberty. And so again, if puberty weren't bad enough, it also is when all of this stuff starts. So now some skin issues. Whiteheads. Whiteheads are when you have an oil gland is blocked by an accumulation of oil. So it is stuck in there, but it hasn't broken through yet. So it hasn't reached the actual surface. So you'll see these. You also have blackheads. This is when that accumulated oil has been exposed to air. It oxidizes and it dries, and then it kind of turns. They call them blackheads because they have a darker color to them. These are usually closer to the surface of the skin, and usually if you remove the plug, the accumulation of oil, everything is fine and dandy. The problem is when you have inflamed oil glands, and this is usually caused by some type of bacterial infection. A blackhead or a whitehead can become infected if you pick at it too much, if you mess with it too much and you cause irritation, or even, you know, tiny openings, cuts in the skin, because bacteria can get in and can cause these infections. Now you do have extreme forms of acne that are bigger inflammations, that are internal inflammations. And these are all can be dealt with you know, different medications, different skin washes, different creams. Some people do take medications for acne, and those, depending on what your level is, some of them are just to deal with the infections. Some of them actually can go in and shut down or greatly decrease the amount of oil that is being produced. Okay, so now here is our pictures, our last slide. And so you can clearly, of course, see the hair shaft, and then you can see as it goes down here. So here's this hair shaft, and then it goes down, and here's this hair follicle, and you have the root down there, and then notice that you have a muscle attached to it. Here is the muscle, the erector muscle that would pull it upright as it contracts it and kind of pulls it. So if it's kind of over this way, I can't really get my hand in the way. And so as it pulls it, it basically is pulling this end closer, which causes the hair to stand up. The blue and the red in there, the red, of course, is the blood vessel, and the blue is the vein, or the artery in the vein. Then you have the kind of the coil here. This is a coil, that's a sweat gland, and it goes up to the skin, and there is the pore. This then you see kind of these like kind of, they look like fat, with this kind of little globby thing over here attached to the hair follicle. That's an oil gland, and so it can be very is very closely associated with the hair follicles and the production of oil. And it's, you know, the oily hair and all that kind of stuff. It's fantastic. Let me tell you, all the stuff that's going down in your skin. So anyway, so this is kind of that general picture where you can kind of see everything all at once. Notice also, like down here, this subcutaneous layer, these fat layers are not the oil glands, they're just fat. They call it adipose tissue, which is a fancier way of saying fat. Okay, so the skin. There you go, guys. Let me know if you have questions. Talk to you later.